Hi! I know that we are about to have a really good time. I need to talk to someone about the new Princess Peach game, but I went and I picked up the game on Saturday with my best friend. We had a really good experience. There was a Nintendo representative and they gave us a tote bag, and when we got back home, we started playing the game, and I would just like to cut to my genuine reaction. I got the cookie! I got the cookie! I got the cookie charge! This game is currently scratching every single itch that my brain has. I love it.
You know how we can express our love?
We can express our love through sculpture.
And we're gonna make a miniature cake.
I've never made fan art on this channel before, but I think if I was gonna do it, it has to be for something that I love this much. Also, this video is in no way sponsored. It's brought me so much joy, and I really want you guys to have joy.
I'm so excited to do this!
Okay, let's go have a lot of fun.
So the cake that inspired this entire thing was the one that's at the end of the baking level. That portion of the level in particular is in complete darkness, so I had to go through the grueling task of playing this a couple of times just to get a decent picture so that we would have some reference. I managed to get a shot of it in the light before it made it blurry in the background, so we are ready to rock and roll. I kind of did a rough sketch of what I was planning on doing without the stairs down the center, and then we got to work sculpting. So to help bulk this project up a little bit, I am going to be filling it up with aluminum foil, because if we just filled this with solid clay, this bad boy would be dense. I know she's looking rough, but trust me, this is just the sketch stage. Okay, we've got our silly little base, and now it is time to cover it up with our fondant layer, which is just us pushing this through a pasta maker and then draping it over top so that everything looks smooth. We don't have to spend hours smoothing out all the cracks and crevices. I did think that this technique was going to be my ticket out of having to do too much smoothing. Turns out that Sculpey 3 holds on to everything, including cracks, crevices, and cat hair. One of my cats has decided to curse me this day. Yuck. Cute. I am at a stage right now where I am maybe concerned that this isn't gonna turn out the way that I want it to. I'm comparing myself for sure, but you know what? Comparison is kind of the death of joy. So I'm just gonna say I'm doing my best. I have to enjoy the process, right? It may not end up looking perfect, but I'm gonna do the best that I can to make it look nice. And I'm supposed to be doing this to have fun. So if you are trying something like this at home and you're comparing yourself to somebody else, even maybe comparing yourself to me, don't worry about it. You're trying your best and you're supposed to be having fun. That's what it's all about. I know it's hard not to, but even I fall into that sand pit sometimes. It's gonna be awesome. It's gonna look great in the end because I tried my best. And that is all that matters, my friends. I've also found this nice little base in my stash that I think I will use to support our cake. Segueing out of the self-doubt and back into having fun, I am going to be making this base so that it matches Baker Peach's skirt because I love that character. I hope I can cosplay as her someday. Now it's time for the portion of this project that I was the most excited for, which is the cookies. I rolled out a bit of this beige clay before using these miniature cookie cutters to cut out a variety of pleasing shapes. Because I wasn't too sure exactly how big the sides of the cake were going to be and how much room we were going to have to work with when everything was assembled, I made sure to make 3 or 4 different sizes just so that we would have a little bit of variety to work with when everything was done. I also realized that in the game it looked like a lot of the filling was jewels, and that was part of the reason that I was drawn to making this cake in the first place, so obviously I decided that these cookies needed to get bedazzled. Don't tell the other cookies, but I think that these ones might have been my favorites to make. I think there's something magical about how they swirled together, and when you turn them into a little curlicue, it looks like they're absolutely seamless. Now normally I would tap these with a brush to give them that sort of cooked texture, but I decided that I did not want to ruin those perfect swirls that I had created or any of the templates that I'd created with the cookie cutters, so I went in and I individually dotted all of these, much to my own personal satisfaction. Now the cookies inside of Princess Peach Showtime also come in some slightly supernatural colors, including this really cute shade of blue that I had to custom mix myself because they don't make clay that color. I also challenged myself by developing this new technique to make those 4 corner cookies with the little checker patterns that you see. Normally those come from a big log where you cut them and then you bake them so that you can have lots of the same cookies. Because I only needed a few, I cut these special strips and then stacked them on top of each other. You can then cut them into little squares and flip them over to make a perfect checkerboard piece. Just give me a sec to kind of like mush it together and round the edges out. Ta-da! We got a little 4 square cookie. Now that I
had figured out what exactly it was I was doing, I completed the process again in a couple of different colors before moving on to dusting all of my work to make sure that it looked like it was baked. You can use chalks or pastels if you want to add this color. I'm just using a leftover eyeshadow that didn't necessarily work for my skin tone. My only piece of advice with using leftover makeup like this is to make sure that you test some in sunlight to make sure it doesn't fade, because that can happen sometimes. Our final step with the cookies was to make sure that they had all of their little gems in place. Now, some of these did end up melting in the oven, but they did have a decent outline, so I just glued fresh ones on after the fact. Now, the red paint had dried enough for our gingham print on this base, so I decided I was going to go in with some paint markers, and that was a big mistake.
Oh, that looks bad.
I decided that I was going to go in and try and paint some straight white lines, which is a little bit of a task, but I felt like maybe I was up to it.
You might be wondering why I'm freehanding this instead of using tape. I found that with this kind of wood texture that we've got here, if you look, it's kind of grainy, and if I use the tape, you get these little leak unders that make it look really messy and make it look really sloppy, so there's not really any point to me taping it. It's just a better idea if I do it freehand and try my best. There's gonna be a lot covering this anyways, so it doesn't need to be perfect. I just want to make sure I'm leaving enough of a lip here that we can attach a cookie.
The cake had been hot glued together, and so it was time to do the finishing touches on all of our cookies and make sure they were shiny and clean. Now, these ones I had left blank because I intended to do frosting on them.
Oh. Oh!
I'm using a new paint from the folk art collection for their dots because I'd heard you could put it in the oven to cure, and that actually causes a problem down the line. If you're struggling to get things smooth like I was when I put this in the oven to bake, you can actually do something after the fact with acetone by scrubbing it down and then sanding it in between. You'll get a pretty smooth surface. Just make sure that you're wearing a mask because the dust particles and fumes can be quite mighty. At this stage in the project, I was kind of bouncing around while things were baking or cooling or cooking or drying, and I finally started to get to work on Stella's face. Again, I'm just using a little bit of Sculpey 3 in a nice bright yellow, and I actually used some of the leftovers to build her a base so that nothing would get dented when I had to put her in the oven, and I didn't have to use my hands to touch her, she says, and then is literally stroking her face with her hands. But there definitely were moments where the toothpick came in handy, like this one, which was pretty nerve-wracking if I'm not gonna lie. We have to do Stella in a couple of stages, so I'm baking her first before we're going to do her body, and that means that it's time for us to do the final assembly of our cake by attaching it to the base. I checked out the reference photo one more time just to make sure that my placement ideas were going to work, and then I got out my silicone cream. I had to do a little pause here because I realized that I'd just given the cake boobs before deciding that it was breast to just move forward. I know this is just voiceover Karis telling you this, but I feel like you need to know that I had so much anxiety and trepidation about putting these first cookies on because I wanted to make sure that I was doing it right. And this may have taken me like 5 seconds in this footage, but you can kind of see me trying to figure out, where is this gonna go? Oh! Also, for those of you that might be curious, the cookie step did have to come before we could finish Stella, because I needed to know where I could put the ribbons. Otherwise, there would have been a little bit of a weird gap, and nobody wants that.
The directions on these said that you could put them in the oven to cure them fast. That doesn't look very good. That looks like cookie nipples. Well, frick. Deflated somehow? Why have you done this? What is it? What? Cookie nipple. Oh! Maybe it won't be so bad. Nobody but you and me needs to know. Secret nipple! And the horrors have been concealed. That'll do, pig. That'll do.
So I used the same paint that had nippled to add frosting again, and I was just asking for trouble.
That is not looking good, so I'm gonna get my husband to give me the blow dryer. Yeah, why did I stick them on? Well, I know why I stuck them on, because I'd already started, and I should have waited, and every 3 minutes I have to keep coming over here and stopping this from dripping. So maybe if I put the blow dryer on it, we can stop this madness! Oh my god. Look at it, it's puckering, it's doing the nipple thing again. Oh my god, my twins are screaming at me. The twins are right there. They're transforming and everything's gonna be okay. My nail fell off. Oh, look at my little twins. Aren't they charming? Oh, and they brought me money. I put my favorite sweater in the paint. I need a 5-minute break. Pulling you from the team. I will just start over. That is a-okay. It's never too late. I'll figure this out.
After that cataclysmic collection of happenstances, I took a little break, I had a little snack, and I got back to painting Stella, and everything was a-okay. For Stella's face, I just used the winning combo of acrylic paint and some tiny paintbrushes and dotting tools that you're actually supposed to use for doing manicures. It worked out really well, except at this stage she looked pretty creepy without a tongue.
That's a little bit too big.
Once Stella had a size-appropriate tongue, I popped her back in the oven, and then it was back to tackling the great cookie disaster.
So this right here is going to be the answer to our dripping problem. It is my favorite heavy body acrylic by Liquitech in titanium white. I've used this in videos before and I forgot to name it. This is the heavy body acrylic I use. It's basically anti-gravitational paint. I'm gonna mix it with the colors that I want and then put it onto our cookies, and they will not drip and we will have frosting. Would you look at that? It's not going anywhere. Anti-gravitational frosting, if ever I did see it.
Now that the biggest hurdle of this project had been overcome, I finished frosting all of our blank cookies, and then it was time for us to move on to building Stella's body. Finally.
It looks like Lisa Simpson. I made the body way too big. There we go, that's more proportionate.
Once she had been placed in her throne where she rightfully belonged, it was time for the part of this project that I was in fact the most nervous about, but ended up going the quickest. These are the dreaded ribbon arms being made, and this is them being put on her body very quickly. I feel like internally I might have just yelled a yee-haw and cliff dived into the project for a second. Yes! The last piece that I needed to sculpt was her iconic bow for the front so that everything would tie together. Now, you may have thought that we were done with the hairdryer after the nipple incident, but I thought that if I heated her up a little bit, she might stick together better when I made the transfer from cake to pan. She did, but I have no idea if the hairdryer had any impact on that result.
I thought I was recording. I was not recording. I got her on there. I lifted her up and her whole arm came off. Stella! I can fix her arm. It's no big deal.
I came back in the room 30 seconds later and this is what I found. And frankly, after everything I've been through, it wasn't that big of a deal, and it was kind of a little bit of a blessing because I ended up needing her disassembled in this way so that I could get her underside that pale pink that she is in the game. To finish Stella off, I added a little bit of gloss glaze just to protect her from any future damage, and I added a few more finishing touches to our cake just to really jazz it up and secure everything so that it would stand the test of time. And with every cookie crumb in place, my darlings, it's time for the moody glamour shots. Thank you so much for joining me on this magical journey today. If you guys enjoyed what you saw, please let me know if you'd like to see more in the comments below. And if you're looking for ways to support my channel, you can check out my online shop where I sell some of my artwork, as well as maybe subscribing if you would like to see more of me. Okay, I love you. Bye! Let's go. Woo! Frick! I fell down. I'm trying to get this intro. I really want them to know how much I love Princess Peach.